Golden shackles, the champagne flute caught the light from the crystal chandeliers, sending prismatic reflections dancing across Vivian Parker's face as she observed the crowd of New York's elite from her corner of the grand ballroom. As a journalist for Global Insider magazine, she had covered enough of these charity galas to recognize the choreographed dance of wealth and influence. Tonight's event benefiting climate research was no exception. A sea of designer gowns, diamond-encrusted watches, and practiced smiles that rarely reached the eyes. Vivian smoothed down her rented midnight blue gown, feeling both part of and separate from this world. 32. She had built a reputation for incisive profiles that stripped away the carefully constructed facades of the powerful. Her editor had sent her tonight with clear instructions: secure an interview with Dominic Blackwood, the notoriously private founder of Nexus Technologies. Her gaze found him across the room, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair showing the first distinguished touches of silver at the temples, despite being only unlike many tech billionaires who affected casual attire as a badge of disruptive honor. Blackwood wore his tailored tuxedo with the ease of someone born to it, though Vivian knew from her research that his origins were anything but privileged. Not what you'd expect, is he? Vivian turned to find a woman in a striking red gown beside her. Sophia Chen, Nexus Technologies' Chief Communications Officer. According to the mental Rolodex Vivian maintained of important corporate figures. And what should I expect, Ms. Chen? Vivian asked, maintaining her professional detachment. Sophia's perfectly lined lips curved upward. Most journalists come expecting the typical tech bro with an ego the size of his net worth. Dominic is different enough to finally grant an interview, Vivian countered. He's declined every request I've sent for the past 3 years. Perhaps you've been asking the wrong questions. Sophia's gaze shifted meaningfully toward her boss. Or perhaps tonight is your lucky night. He mentioned your name earlier. Before Vivian could press for more information, Sophia glided away, leaving her with the unsettling sensation of being a pawn in someone else's game. She took another sip of champagne, its bubbles sharp against her tongue. For the next hour, Vivian circulated through the crowd, collecting snippets of conversation and business intelligence that might prove useful for future articles. She was deep in conversation with an environmental scientist when she felt a presence at her back, a subtle shift in the air that made the fine hairs on her neck stand up. Dr. Harrison, I hope I'm not interrupting. The voice was deep, with the assured cadence of someone accustomed to being heard. I wanted to personally thank you for your research presentation earlier. Vivian turned to find herself face-to-face with Dominic Blackwood. Up close, his features were more striking sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw softened by unexpected laugh lines, an eye so intensely blue they seemed to pierce through social pretense. The scientist beamed. Mr. Blackwood, your foundation's grant has been instrumental in our work. Please, it's Dominic. His gaze shifted to Vivian, a flicker of recognition crossing his features. And you must be Vivian Parker. She extended her hand, professional to the core despite the unexpected flutter in her chest. Mr. Blackwood. His hand enveloped hers, warm and firm. Dominic, he corrected, holding the handshake a beat longer than necessary. Your profile on Senator Williams last month was remarkably insightful. You have a talent for uncovering what people prefer to keep hidden. Thank you, she replied, surprised by his familiarity with her work. Though I prefer to think of it as revealing truth rather than uncovering secrets. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. Is there a difference? Truth serves the public good. Secrets typically serve only those who keep them. The scientist excused himself, leaving them in a bubble of charged silence amid the noisy gala. Which do you think I have, Miss Parker? Truths or secrets? Dominic asked, signaling a waiter who promptly brought fresh champagne. Vivian accepted the offered glass. Everyone has both. The question is, which predominates? And what would your readers prefer to consume? My truth or my secrets? There was something challenging in his tone, as though testing her. They're not mutually exclusive in a proper profile. She met his gaze steadily. But I suspect you didn't approach me to discuss journalistic ethics, Dominic laughed. the sound genuine enough to draw glances from nearby guests unaccustomed to seeing the reserved billionaire so relaxed. Direct, I appreciate that. He took a sip of his champagne. You've requested an interview multiple times? And you've declined each time, until now. He leaned slightly closer, his cologne a subtle blend of sandalwood and something uniquely his own. I'm flying to Tokyo tomorrow for our Asia-Pacific expansion announcement. Join me on my jet, and you'll have your exclusive. Vivian blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. On your private jet? It's 14 hours of uninterrupted access. It's more than enough time for your interview. His expression remained impassive. But something flickered in those blue eyes, a challenge, perhaps, or something more complex. Unless you're afraid of flying. I'm not afraid of anything, Mr. Blackwood, she replied automatically, then inwardly winced at how defensive it sounded. His smile deepened. Then I'll expect you at Teterboro Airport, Hangar 7. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. My team will email you the details and security clearance. Before she could respond, he was pulled away by a group of eager investors, leaving Vivian with the distinct impression that she had just agreed to something far more complicated than an interview. Back in her modest Brooklyn apartment, Vivian kicked off her heels and called her editor, Trevor, who answered despite the late hour. Please tell me you got something on Blackwood, he said without preamble. Better. I got an interview. She poured herself a glass of water, suddenly parched. On his private jet to Tokyo, tomorrow morning. There was a moment of stunned silence before Trevor erupted with excitement. Are you serious? This could be the cover story we've been waiting for. The man hasn't given a proper interview in years. No. Vivian sank onto her couch, the reality of the situation settling in. It's odd, isn't it? Why now? Why me? Who cares? Maybe he liked your work. Maybe he's finally ready to tell his story. Either way, this is huge, Viv. Asterisk after ending the call, Vivian opened her laptop and pulled up her research files on Dominic Blackwood. The official biography was impressive enough. Orphaned at 12, scholarship to MIT, founded Nexus Technologies at 24. Revolutionized quantum computing, amassed a fortune estimated at $47 billion. The unofficial details were sparse, but intriguing. No long-term relationships. Fiercely protective of his privacy, rumored to work 18-hour days. What made a man like that suddenly open up? And why to her specifically? Had she packed for the unexpected journey? Vivian couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Dominic Blackwood's invitation than professional interest. Her journalist's instinct, the same one that had led her to uncover political scandals and corporate malfeasance, was sending warning signals. The morning dawned clear and bright. A perfect day for flying. Vivian dressed with care in a navy pantsuit that projected professionalism while remaining comfortable for the long flight. She arrived at the private hangar to find a sleek Gulfstream G650 waiting, its engines already humming with potential energy. Sophia Chen greeted her at the bottom of the aircraft stairs. Ms. Parker, welcome. Dominic is already aboard. I didn't realize you would be joining us, Vivian said, trying to hide her disappointment at not having Blackwood to herself for the interview. Sophia's smile was enigmatic. I'm not. This flight is just for the two of you, plus the crew, of course. She lowered her voice. A word of advice? Dominic values authenticity above all else. Don't try to flatter him or play games. It won't work. With that cryptic counsel, Sophia handed her over to the flight attendant, a discreet professional who escorted Vivian up the stairs and into the opulent cabin of the private jet. Asterisk the interior was a study in understated luxury cream leather seats, polished wood accents, and ambient lighting that created an atmosphere of calm sophistication. Dominic rose from a seat near the front, dressed more casually than the previous night in dark jeans and a charcoal cashmere sweater that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. Vivian, welcome aboard. He gestured to the seat across from his. I trust you'll find everything to your liking. Claire will take excellent care of us during the flight. The flight attendant smiled professionally. We'll be departing shortly. Please make yourselves comfortable. As Vivian settled into the buttery soft leather seat, she couldn't help but feel she was crossing a threshold into Dominic Blackwood's world, a rarefied space of privilege and power. She placed her recorder on the small table between them, her notebook beside it. "Shall we begin with the basics?" she asked, pen poised. Dominic's eyes held hers, intense and unreadable. "Not yet." He nodded to Claire, who brought 2 glasses of water. "First, let's establish some ground rules for our time together." The engines increased their pitch as the plane began to taxi. Vivian felt the familiar flutter of anticipation in her stomach, though whether from the imminent takeoff or from the enigmatic man sitting across from her, she couldn't quite say. "I didn't agree to ground rules, Mr. Blackwood," she said carefully. His lips curved in that same challenging smile from the gala. "Then consider them a proposal. One I think you'll find difficult to refuse." The plane accelerated down the runway, pressing Vivian back into her seat as they lifted into the clear blue sky, leaving the solid ground of her professional certainties far below. Turbulent confessions, the private jet climbed steadily through the clouds, New York City shrinking beneath them until it resembled an architect's miniature model. Vivian watched the transformation through her window, using the moment to collect her thoughts before turning back to face Dominic Blackwood and his mysterious proposal. "I'm listening," she said, withdrawing her gaze from the vanishing sight. Calves. Dominic studied her with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously seen and scrutinized. "I followed your career with interest, Miss Parker. Your integrity is... A journalist sets you apart in an industry too often driven by clickbait and sensationalism." "Flattery wasn't what I expected as your first ground rule," Vivian replied, keeping her tone professional despite the unexpected compliment. A brief smile touched his lips. "Not flattery. Context." He leaned forward slightly. "I'm offering you unprecedented access not just for this flight, but for the next 2 weeks in Tokyo. Exclusive coverage of our Asia-Pacific launch. Interviews with my executive team, and complete transparency about our operations." Vivian's journalistic instincts sharpened. This was far beyond what she had anticipated, and in return, you agree to 3 conditions. He held up one finger. "First, you publish nothing until I've reviewed it, not for censorship, but for factual accuracy only." She frowned. "That's not how journalism works." Second, he continued as if she hadn't spoken, raising another finger. "You agree to spend those 2 weeks getting to know me, not just as a CEO, but as a person." The unusual request made Vivian pause. "And the third condition?" Dominic's expression shifted, something vulnerable briefly crossing his features before his composure returned. "The third condition depends on the outcome of the second. Let's leave it there for now." "That's remarkably vague for a business negotiation," Vivian observed. Her curiosity piqued despite her professional reservations. "This isn't merely a business negotiation." His blue eyes held hers steadily. "I've declined interviews for years because I have no interest in being another caricature billionaire in the public eye. I'm offering you something different, something real, but it requires mutual trust." The cabin fell silent, except for the soft hum of the jet engines. Claire appeared with the practiced timing of an excellent service professional, setting down 2 cups of steaming coffee before discreetly retreating to the galley. Vivian wrapped her fingers around the fine porcelain, buying time to think. The journalist in her recognized the unusual opportunity, while the woman in her couldn't ignore the subtle current of electricity that seemed to flow between them. "Why me?" she finally asked. "And why now?" Dominic took a sip of his coffee before answering. "Why you? Because your reporting shows a rare ability to see beyond facades. You don't settle for the convenient narrative." His expression grew more serious. "Why now? Because Nexus is about to enter a new phase? The technology we're launching in Tokyo will change how the world processes information. I need someone who can communicate that vision accurately." It made sense professionally, but Vivian sensed something left unsaid. "And the personal element? Getting to know you as a person? Is that so difficult to understand?" There was a hint of challenge in his voice. "We're about to spend 14 hours in close quarters. I'd prefer conversation to interrogation." Vivian considered her options. The exclusive access would be a career-defining opportunity, and she could always negotiate the review process to maintain her journalistic integrity. As for getting to know him personally, wasn't that what made for a compelling profile anyway? "I'll agree to review factual elements with you before publication. But final editorial decisions remain mine, she countered. As for getting to know you personally, I'm willing to spend the time, but I make no promises about the outcome. Fair enough. He extended his hand across the table. Do we have an agreement? As their hands met, Vivian felt that same spark of awareness she'd experienced at the gala. His grip was warm and firm, his eyes never leaving hers. Now, she said, reclaiming her hand and reaching for her recorder, shall we begin the actual interview? For the next 2 hours, they covered the basics: his childhood and foster care after, his parents' death in a car accident, his scholarship to MIT, and the founding of Nexus Technologies. Dominic spoke with measured precision about his business philosophy and technological vision. But Vivian noticed how he deflected questions about his personal life with practiced ease. After they paused for lunch, an exquisite meal of seared, sea-based and seasonal vegetables prepared by the onboard chef, Vivian decided to push deeper. You've built an empire worth billions, revolutionized quantum computing, and created one of the most admired corporate cultures in tech, she noted, reviewing her notes. Yet there's remarkably little known about your life outside Nexus. No serious relationships, no public hobbies, no social media presence. What does Dominic Blackwood do when he's not changing the technological landscape? Something shifted in his demeanor, a subtle tensing that most would miss. But Vivian had made a career of reading people. Is isolation the inevitable price of success in your view? She added. Dominic gazed out the window at the endless blue sky before answering. Success doesn't necessarily cause isolation. Sometimes isolation is what drives success. That sounds like a practiced answer. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she glimpsed something raw beneath the polished exterior. Would you prefer an unpracticed one? Always. Dominic set his glass down and leaned back in his seat. When you grow up in the foster system, you learn that connections are temporary. People come and go. The only constant is yourself and what you can build with your own hands and mind. His voice remained even, but Vivian sensed the cost of that control. I built Nexus not just as a company, but as a place where I belonged, where I had purpose, and that was enough. It was. Until recently, hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Have you ever wanted something so badly that the mere possibility of not having it becomes intolerable? The unexpected vulnerability in the question caught Vivian off guard. I think everyone has experienced that at some point. I haven't. Not since I was 12 and realized no one was coming to save me. His gaze intensified. Until now. The atmosphere in the cabin changed, charged with something Vivian couldn't quite name. Before she could formulate a response, Dominic pressed a button on his armrest. Claire, would you mind giving us some privacy? Perhaps the pilot could give us an update on our flight path? The flight attendant appeared almost instantly. Of course, Mr. Blackwood. We're currently over the Pacific, making excellent time. I'll be in the crew quarters if you need anything. Once they were alone, Dominic rose from his seat and moved to the window, his tall frame silhouetted against the vast sky. What I'm about to tell you isn't for publication, at least not yet. He turned to face her. This is where those ground rules become relevant. Vivian's journalistic instincts went on high alert. I can't agree to keep something off the record without knowing what it is. I understand professional ethics, Vivian. I'm not asking you to compromise them. He returned to his seat, now directly beside her rather than across the table. I'm asking you to hear me out as a person, not just as a journalist. Their proximity sent an unexpected wave of awareness through her. From this distance, she could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the tiny lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of both laughter and strain. All right, she conceded, switching off her recorder as a gesture of good faith. I'm listening. Dominic took a deep breath. The technology we're launching in Tokyo isn't just another product. It's a quantum neural interface that can process information at speeds previously thought impossible. The potential applications are limitless, from medical breakthroughs to climate modeling to artificial intelligence. That sounds revolutionary, Vivian acknowledged, but hardly the kind of secret that requires this level of drama. The secret isn't the technology. It's why I developed it. His voice dropped lower. 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with a degenerative neurological condition syndrome. It's rare, progressive, and currently incurable. Vivian felt the shock of his words like a physical blow. Sorry, I had no idea. No one does, outside of my medical team, and now you. His expression remained calm, but she could see the cost of his revelation and the tightening of his jaw. The neural interface was initially developed as a way to map and potentially repair the neural pathways affected by the condition. How Vivian cleared her throat, finding her professional detachment momentarily shaken. How advanced is your condition? Early stages? Occasional tremors? Some cognitive effects during stress? Nothing visible to others yet. His eyes held hers. But the progression is inevitable unless we find a solution. And has the technology shown promise for treatment? The preliminary results are encouraging. But that's not why I'm telling you. This, Dominic leaned forward, reducing the space between them even further. The technology has value far beyond my personal situation. If it falls into the wrong hands or is misrepresented to the public, the consequences could be severe. Understanding began to dawn. You need someone to tell the story correctly, to shape the public narrative. Yes, but I need someone who understands not just the technology, but me, my motivations. What's at stake? His eyes searched hers. Why I wanted those 2 weeks, that's why I wanted you. The double meaning in his last words hung in the air between them. Vivian felt a surge of conflicting emotions, professional excitement at the exclusive story, personal sympathy for his condition, and an undeniable attraction that had nothing to do with either. I appreciate your trust, she said carefully, but this changes the nature of our agreement. I can't promise objectivity if I'm becoming part of the story. I'm not asking for bias. I'm asking for understanding. Dominic's hand moved to cover hers on the armrest, his touch sending a current of awareness up her arm. And I'm asking for something else, something I've never asked of anyone before. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, jolting slightly as, if in response to the tension in the cabin, Vivian was acutely conscious of his hand on hers, of the narrowing space between them, of the intensity in his blue eyes. What exactly are you asking for, Dominic? Her voice emerged huskier than intended. A chance. His thumb traced a small circle on her wrist, the gesture simultaneously innocent and intimate. I've watched your career for years, read every article, seen how you think through your writing, and I received my diagnosis. I knew that eventually I would need someone I could trust completely to tell my story. The more I learned about you, the more certain I became. Vivian withdrew her hand, needing physical distance to process his words. So this is a professional arrangement after all. You've been vetting me as your biographer. A flash of frustration crossed his features. If that were all, I could have approached you directly. I wouldn't have needed this private setting, this time alone. Then what is this, Dominic? Because right now it feels like manipulation. Despite her words, Vivian couldn't ignore the pull she felt toward him, a connection that transcended professional interest. He stood abruptly, running a hand through his dark hair. You're right. This isn't how I planned to do this. He paced the length of the cabin before turning back to her. The truth is, I've been following your work because I was drawn to your mind, your perspective. The more I learned about you, the more I wanted to know. By the time I received my diagnosis, you weren't just a journalist I respected, you were someone I thought about constantly. The raw honesty in his voice made Vivian's heart race. It sounds like an obsession. He gave a short, self-deprecating laugh. Perhaps it started that way. But then we met at the Watson Foundation dinner last year. You asked me a question during the Q&A that no one else would have thought to ask. Vivian remembered the event she had challenged him on the ethical implications of his neural mapping technology. You remembered that? I remembered everything about that night. The way you stood your ground when I tried to deflect. The intelligence. In your eyes, his voice softened. The blue dress you wore that matched them exactly. The realization that he had noticed her, remembered her. Long before she knew he was aware of her existence, sent a strange thrill through Vivian. So what is this proposal really about, Dominic? What do you want from me? He moved back to stand. Before her, his expression more open than she had yet seen it. I want what anyone facing their own mortality wants: connection. Meaning, I want someone who sees me as I am, not as my wealth or my public image. And you think that's me? A journalist you've met exactly twice? A woman whose mind have come to know through her work? A woman who doesn't flinch from difficult truths. He knelt before her seat, bringing them eye to eye. I'm not asking for promises, Vivian. I'm asking for possibility. The intimacy of the moment, suspended 30,000 feet above the earth, in a bubble of luxury and confession. It felt simultaneously surreal and more authentic than anything Vivian had experienced in years. Her professional ethics warred with the undeniable pull she felt toward this complex man. This is crazy, she whispered, more to herself than to him. You don't even know me, then let me. His hand reached up to brush a strand of hair from her face, the gesture achingly gentle. That's my proposal. 2 weeks in Tokyo. No expectations. Beyond getting to know each other, as journalist and subject, yes, but also as Vivian and Dominic. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, the air between them seemed charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. Vivian knew the professional response would be to establish clear boundaries, to step back from this unexpected intimacy. But something deeper, more instinctual, kept her frozen in place, caught in the gravity of his gaze. The plane shuddered with another patch of turbulence, breaking the spell. Dominic rose smoothly to his feet, giving her space to breathe, to think. You don't need to answer now, he said, his composure returning though his eyes remained intense. We still have 7 hours before Tokyo. Consider it carefully. As he moved back to his original seat, giving her the physical distance she needed, Vivian felt as though she stood at a crossroads. Behind her lay the safe territory of professional detachment. Ahead, an uncharted landscape of personal connection. With a man who had just entrusted her with his most vulnerable secret, the recorder sat silent on the table between them. A reminder of her purpose, her profession. But as the jet continued its journey across the vast Pacific, Vivian found herself contemplating possibilities that had nothing to do with journalism and everything to do with the unexpected longing that had awakened within her. Asterisk loves to send silence. Stretched between them as the private jet continued its journey across the Pacific, Vivian gazed out the window at the endless expanse of ocean below, her reflection ghosted against the darkening sky. The revelation of Dominic's condition and his unexpected proposal had thrown her carefully maintained professional boundaries into disarray. She felt his eyes on her, patient yet intense, waiting for a response she wasn't sure she could give. After what seemed like an eternity, Vivian turned back to face him. I need to understand something, she said, her voice steady. Despite her inner turmoil, if I agree to these 2 weeks in Tokyo to getting to know you as more than just a subject, what happens afterward? To the story, to your secret, to whatever this is between us. Dominic's expression softened, the mask of the billionaire. CEO temporarily set aside. I don't have all the answers, Vivian. For someone who plans meticulously in business, this is remarkably uncharted territory. His hands, usually so steady, betrayed a slight tremor as he reached for his water glass. I can tell you what I hope for, but I won't pretend to certainty. Tell me what you hope for then, she urged, suddenly needing to hear it articulated. He met her gaze directly. I hope that you'll find the story worth telling. Both the public one about Nexus's technology and the private one about why it matters. I hope you'll help me shape how the world understands what we've created. A brief pause then, and selfishly, I hope that you'll find me worth knowing beyond the confines of your article. The raw honesty in his voice touched something in Vivian. Throughout her career, she had interviewed countless powerful people, all of them carefully managing their image, revealing only what served their purposes. Dominic's vulnerability felt like a rare gift to her, a sophisticated strategy. Why didn't you just approach me professionally, she asked. Why all this ... orchestration? Would you have believed me? He raised an eyebrow. If I had simply called your office and offered an exclusive about revolutionary technology developed, partly to combat my secret terminal illness, while also suggesting a personal connection, would that have seemed credible, or desperate, or manipulative? Vivian couldn't help but smile slightly at the absurdity when framed that way. Fair point. Besides, he continued, his own lips curving in response to her smile, I needed to see if what I felt from your writing from our brief interactions held true in person. If there was actually something here worth pursuing, and is there, The question slipped out before she could censor it. His expression grew serious again. You tell me? The ball was firmly in her court. Vivian took a deep breath, considering her options. The professional in her recognized the unprecedented opportunity this story represented. The woman in her couldn't deny the attraction she felt toward Dominic, an attraction. It's based not just on his obvious physical appeal, but on the glimpses of the complex man beneath the billionaire persona. I'll agree to the 2 weeks, she said finally. I'll write your story the public one, and as much of the private one as is appropriate to share. I'll get to know you beyond the boardroom. She held his gaze steadily. But I maintain my journalistic integrity. If I discover anything that the public needs to know, anything that could cause harm, I won't withhold it, even for you. Relief and something warmer flickered across his features. And as for the personal element, she continued, needing to establish clarity. I can't promise anything beyond professional respect and personal openness. 2 weeks is a very short time to build the kind of trust you're asking for. I'm not asking for promises, Dominic replied. Only possibility. The tension in the cabin shifted, transforming from uncertainty to something electric with potential. Claire chose that moment to reappear, her professional demeanor unruffled as she inquired about dinner preparations. The interruption provided a welcome return to normalcy, allowing both of them to retreat slightly from the emotional precipice they had approached. As the evening progressed, their conversation eased into more neutral territory. Books they had read, places they had traveled, the small details that composed the tapestry of 2 separate lives. Vivian found herself laughing at Dominic's dry wit, surprised by his self-deprecating humor and his genuine interest in her opinions. The billionaire facade fell away, revealing glimpses of the orphan boy who had fought his way to success, the visionary who saw technology as a means to human connection rather than replacement. After dinner, as the cabin lights dimmed to accommodate the changing time zones, Dominic showed her to the private bedroom at the rear of the aircraft. You should rest, he said, standing at a careful distance. Tokyo will be demanding, and jet lag is merciless.
What about you?
Avian asked, noting the fatigue beginning to shadow his eyes. I'll sleep out here. I'm accustomed to it. Hesitated, then added, Good night, Vivian. Thank you for your trust. It's not something I take lightly. As she closed the door to the luxurious bedroom, Vivian felt the weight of the day's revelations settle over her. She changed into the silk pajamas that had been thoughtfully provided, their cool touch against her skin, a reminder of the rarefied world she had temporarily entered. Sleep came surprisingly easily, the gentle hum of the engines lulling her into dreams filled with blue eyes and unspoken possibilities. She woke several hours later, disoriented by the unchanging darkness outside the windows and the quietness of the cabin. Her watch indicated it was 3 a.m. according to the time zone they had departed from. Slipping on the cashmere robe that hung beside the bed, Vivian ventured out into the main cabin. She found Dominic awake, illuminated by the soft glow of his tablet screen. He looked up as she approached, setting the device aside. Trouble sleeping? He asked, his voice hushed in the stillness of the night sky. Time zones, she explained, settling into the seat across from him. My body has no idea what time it is. A hazard of global business, he agreed. In the dimmed cabin lighting, his features seemed softer, the sharp lines of authority gentled by shadow. I was just reviewing the presentation for Tokyo at 3. In the morning, a rueful smile touched his lips. Old habits. Sleep has never come easily to me. Because of your condition? She asked gently. He shook his head. No, that's more recent. This is older, from childhood, I think. Foster homes aren't conducive to restful nights. The casual reference to his difficult past opened a door Vivian hadn't expected. Tell me about that time, she requested, curling her legs beneath her. In the spacious seat, not for the article, it's for me to understand. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, perhaps that she would ask about the man rather than the mogul. For the next hour, as the jet cruised through the darkness above the Pacific, Dominic spoke of things he rarely shared, the bewildering grief of losing both parents at 12, the series of foster homes ranging from neglectful to merely indifferent, The determination to escape through education that had driven him since adolescence? The hardest part wasn't the physical discomfort or even the emotional neglect. He confided, his gaze fixed on some point in the middle distance. It was the impermanence. Nothing belonged to you, not your space, not your time, sometimes not even your name if a foster parent decided they preferred a nickname. Is that why you built Nexus? Vivian asked, sensing the connection. To create something permanent? His eyes refocused on her, warming with appreciation for her insight. Partly, to build something that couldn't be taken away, something that might outlast me. A shadow crossed his features, though that goal has taken on new urgency in recent years. Vivian found herself moving to sit beside him, the distance between them suddenly unbearable. The neural interface, you really believe it could help with your condition? The early trials are promising. It's not a cure, but it could significantly slow progression, perhaps even reverse some damage. His hand rested on the seat between them, those capable fingers that had built a technological empire, now betraying the faintest tremor. But the bigger potential is what it could do for millions of others with neurological conditions. That's the legacy I want, regardless of what happens to me. Without conscious thought, Vivian placed her hand over his. That's why you need the story told correctly, so people understand it's not just another tech innovation, but something with profound human implications. Yes, his fingers interlaced. With hers, warm and surprisingly strong. And why I need someone who sees the person behind the technology is the why, not just the what. The intimacy of the moment suspended in the dark quiet of night. Miles above the earth felt, both surreal and profoundly genuine. Vivian was acutely aware of their joined hands, of the subtle scent of his cologne, of the vulnerability that had temporarily displaced his usual commanding presence. Dominic, she began, uncertain what she meant to say, but feeling the need to speak into the charged silence. Before she could continue, the plane lurched violently, shuddering through an unexpected pocket of turbulence. Their bodies were thrown together, Dominic's arm instinctively wrapping around her shoulders to stabilize her. For a breathless moment, they remained pressed together, hearts racing from the sudden movement and from their proximity. The captain's voice came over the intercom, apologizing for the unexpected rough air and requesting that they secure themselves for what might be a bumpy stretch. But neither moved immediately, caught in a moment of suspended time as their eyes met in the dim cabin light. Vivian began. Yes, of course, Dominic replied, reluctantly withdrawing his arm. They fastened their seatbelts as the plane continued to shake intermittently. Vivian noticed Dominic's knuckles whitening as he gripped the armrest, his breathing becoming more controlled, deliberate. Are you all right? She asked, concerned by the sudden tension in his posture. Just the turbulence, he said, but his tight smile belied the casual dismissal. Asterisk understanding dawned. Is this ... Is it related to your condition? Distress trigger? Symptoms? He hesitated, then nodded once, sharply. Sometimes. Nothing serious, just increased tremors. Some cognitive. Vivian acted on instinct, reaching across to take his hand again. Focus on me, she said softly. Tell me more about the neural interface. How does it actually work? Gratitude flickered in his eyes as he recognized her strategy, distraction through intellectual engagement. As the turbulence continued, he explained the complex technology in remarkable detail, his tension gradually easing as his brilliant mind focused on the science, rather than his physical discomfort. By the time the plane emerged from the rough air into smoother skies, their hands remained linked. The barrier between interviewer and subject, between billionaire and journalist, temporarily dissolved by shared vulnerability. Thank you, Dominic, said simply when the captain announced they had cleared the turbulence. For what? For seeing what I needed without my having to ask? His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm, sending ripples of awareness up her arm. It's a rare quality. Vivian knew she should withdraw her hand, re-establish professional distance, but found herself unwilling to break the connection. It's what good journalists do: observe, understand, respond. Is that all this is? Journalistic instinct? His gaze held hers, searching. The question hung between them. demanding an honesty Vivian wasn't sure she was ready to give. The cabin. It felt suddenly too small, too intimate, the air charged with unspoken possibilities. "It's nearly dawn," she said instead, nodding toward the window where the first faint lightening of the eastern sky was visible. "We should be arriving in Tokyo soon." Dominic accepted her deflection with grace, though his eyes reflected a knowing. Patience. Yes. And then our 2 weeks begin in earnest. The reminder of their agreement, 2 weeks to tell his story, to explore whatever was developing between them, sent a flutter of anticipation through Vivian's chest. As the first golden rays of sunrise streaked across the horizon, illuminating the cabin with gentle light, she realized that despite her professional reservations, she was eager for their time in Tokyo to begin. The pilot's voice announced their initial descent, requesting that they prepare for landing. Vivian reluctantly withdrew her hand from Dominic's to gather her belongings, their brief moment of connection giving way to practical preparations. As they began their descent toward Tokyo, the sprawling metropolis coming into view beneath them, Vivian felt as though she too was descending into uncharted territory, a landscape where professional ambition and personal attraction converged in ways she had never anticipated. Dominic watched her from across the cabin, his expression thoughtful. "Second thoughts?" he asked quietly. "No," she replied, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Just adjusting my expectations." His smile, then warm, genuine, touched with hope, made her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with the plane's descent and everything to do with the journey they were about to begin together. As the wheels touched down on Japanese soil, Vivian knew that regardless of what the next 2 weeks held, whether professional triumph, personal connection, or heartbreaking revelation, she had already crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The story she had come to write had expanded to include her own narrative, intertwining with Dominic's in ways she could never have anticipated when she boarded his private jet in New York. The plane taxied to a stop. Dominic rose, extending his hand to her. "Welcome to Tokyo, Vivian," he said, his voice rich with promise. "Shall we begin?" Taking his hand, she stepped forward into whatever awaited them, journalist and subject, woman and man, to people connected by circumstance, choice, and the possibility of something neither had dared to seek until now. As they descended the aircraft stairs into the bright Tokyo morning, the world awaited their story, both one that would be shared with millions and the one that was theirs alone to write. Tokyo whispers. The sleek black limousine glided through Tokyo's morning traffic, its tinted windows shielding Vivian and Dominic from the curious gazes of passers-by. Neon signs flashed against gleaming skyscrapers, stark contrast to the occasional glimpse of ancient temples nestled between modern structures. Vivian watched the city unfold through the window, acutely aware of Dominic beside her, their shared silence, comfortable yet charged with unspoken potential. "We'll be staying at the Imperial," Dominic said, breaking the contemplative quiet. "I've arranged adjoining suites, privacy with proximity." Vivian turned to him, one eyebrow raised. "Thoughtful. Practical," he countered, though the slight curve of his lips suggested more. "The launch preparations will be intense. Having you close will maximize our time together for the interview, of course." "Of course," she echoed, unable to suppress a smile at his deliberate ambiguity. As the limousine pulled into the circular driveway of the prestigious hotel, Vivian noticed the subtle shift in Dominic's demeanor, shoulders, straightening expression. Becoming more composed, the vulnerable man from the airplane receding behind the billionaire CEO facade. It was fascinating to witness this transformation. Like watching an actor step into character, the hotel staff greeted Dominic with practiced deference, bowing deeply as they escorted them directly to their suites, bypassing the usual check-in procedures. The accommodations were breathtaking, traditional Japanese aesthetics blending seamlessly with modern luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the Imperial Palace gardens below. "The Nexus team has prepared a schedule for you," Dominic explained, handing her a sleek tablet as they stood in the living area of her suite. "Interviews with key executives, access to our labs, attendance at press events, but the evenings... He paused, his blue eyes holding hers. The evenings are ours to explore Tokyo and continue our conversation. Vivian accepted the tablet, her fingers brushing his in a touch that sent an unexpected current through her. "I should prepare for today's events," she said, needing space to regain her professional equilibrium after the intimacy of their flight. "Of course." Dominic stepped back, respecting her unspoken request. "We'll depart for Nexus Tower in 2 hours. The connecting door remains unlocked on my side. Your privacy is entirely at your discretion." After he left, Vivian sank onto the plush sofa, head spinning from jet lag and the whirlwind of emotions the past 24 hours had evoked. She opened her laptop, intending to review her notes, but found herself staring at the blank document, her mind replaying the moment there. Hands had joined during the turbulence. "Focus," she muttered to herself, forcing her attention back to the professional task at hand. She reviewed the schedule Dominic had provided. The next 2 weeks were meticulously planned. A perfect blend of professional access and personal time that suggested considerable thought had gone into this arrangement long before their meeting. At the gala, the realization should have disturbed her evidence of calculation rather than spontaneity, but instead, she found it oddly touching. Dominic Blackwood, a man who controlled vast technological resources, had channeled that same careful planning into creating an opportunity to know her 2 hours later. Freshly showered and dressed in a tailored navy suit that projected professional confidence, Vivian joined Dominic in the hotel lobby. He wore charcoal gray, his commanding presence drawing subtle glances from staff and guests alike. "Ready to see where the future's being built?" he asked, guiding her toward the waiting car with a light touch at the small of her back. The Nexus Tower rose like a gleaming silver katana in the heart of Tokyo's business district, its innovative architecture making it instantly recognizable in the city skyline. Inside, the headquarters hummed with purposeful energy, employees moving with the coordinated precision of a well-rehearsed orchestra. Sophia Chen materialized in the lobby, her expression revealing momentary surprise at the subtle change in dynamic between Dominic and Vivian before her professional mask slipped back into place. "The executive team is assembled in the conference room," she informed them, "and the lab tour is scheduled for 2 p.m. after lunch." The morning unfolded in a series of interviews with Nexus's senior leadership, each providing pieces of the company's vision while deferring to Dominic on the most significant aspects of the neural interface technology. Vivian observed the respect they held for him, not the fearful deference often found in corporate hierarchies, but genuine admiration tinged with protective loyalty. During a brief break, she overheard 2 executives speaking in hushed Japanese, unaware of her basic proficiency in the language. "The tremor in his left hand was worse yesterday," one murmured, concern evident in his tone. "Dr. Tanaka adjusted the prototype again last night," the other replied. "Today's demonstration should go smoothly." Vivian filed this information away, pieces of the puzzle gradually forming a clearer picture. Dominic wasn't just developing this technology for future application, he was already using a prototype himself, likely as his own first test subject. The laboratory tour confirmed her suspicions. While most of the presentation focused on the commercial applications of the neural interface from enhanced communication to medical diagnostics, Vivian noticed a separate, more secure section of the lab, where Dr. Haruki Tanaka, the brilliant neurologist heading the research team, spoke in quiet consultation with Dominic. When Dominic rejoined the tour, she noted the steadiness in his hands, the renewed clarity in his eyes. The prototype was working at least temporarily. "Impressed?" he asked as they rode the elevator back to the executive floor momentarily. "Alone. Intrigued," she countered. "The public applications you're showcasing are revolutionary enough, but you're not showing everything, are you?" A flicker of surprise crossed his features before he smiled. "Perceptive as always. There are aspects of the research that remain confidential, including the prototype you're currently using." The elevator stopped, doors opening to reveal the executive lounge. Dominic held her gaze for a long moment before responding. "Have dinner with me tonight. It's not a CEO and journalist. Just Dominic and Vivian. I'll answer that question, and others you haven't thought to ask yet." The invitation hung between them, both professional opportunity and personal promise. Where? Somewhere away from corporate eyes and expectations. His voice softened. Somewhere we can continue what began on the plane. The remainder of the afternoon passed in a blur of presentations and demonstrations. Vivian maintaining her professional focus despite the anticipation building for their evening together. By the time she returned to her hotel suite to change for dinner, the lines between her journalistic mission and personal involvement had blurred in ways that both thrilled and unsettled her. She chose a simple black dress that walked the line between professional and elegant, applying minimal makeup that highlighted her natural features rather than transforming them. This evening called for authenticity, not artifice. A gentle knock on the connecting door announced Dominic's arrival. When she opened it, she found him in dark trousers and a charcoal sweater that softened his usual corporate appearance, making him look younger, more approachable. "No suit?" she observed, gathering her small clutch purse. "No CEO tonight," he replied, his eyes appreciating her appearance without objectifying. "Just a man taking a fascinating woman to dinner." They traveled by taxi rather than limousine, Dominic giving the driver instructions in flawless Japanese. The restaurant was hidden on a narrow side street in Ginza, its entrance marked only by a simple wooden sign. Inside, traditional tatami rooms offered complete privacy. The low lighting and minimalist decor creating an atmosphere of intimate tranquility. "This place has been serving traditional kaiseki cuisine for over a century," Dominic explained, as they were seated at a low table, their knees nearly touching. "The current chef is the 5th generation of his family to run it." "You speak Japanese remarkably well," Vivian noted, as they were served delicate cups of sake. "Necessity. Japan was our first major market outside the U.S., he smiled slightly, "though I suspect you understand more than you let on. Your reaction to certain conversations today was ... telling." Caught. Vivian didn't deny it. Basic proficiency. "Enough to gather that you're using a prototype of the neural interface yourself?" Rather than looking annoyed at her detective work, Dominic seemed impressed. "Yes, for the past 8 months. Is that safe?" "Calculated risk." His expression grew more serious. "The interface was originally designed specifically for Reith syndrome. The commercial applications came later as we recognized its broader potential. The first course arrived a delicate arrangement of seasonal ingredients. That looked more like art than food." As they began to eat, Dominic continued, "The prototype stabilizes the neural pathways affected by the condition, essentially creating bypass circuits around damaged areas. It's not a cure, but it buys time." "Time for what?" Vivian asked softly. His eyes met hers over the rim of his sight cup. "For finding a permanent solution? For completing what I've started with Nexus? For ... double quotes, he hesitated. "For experiencing things I've postponed in pursuit of building my company," the implication hung in the air between them as more courses arrived, each more exquisite than the last. Their conversation flowed easily from professional to personal, Dominic sharing stories of Nexus's early days, while Vivian spoke of her journey through journalism. With each exchange, the barriers between them lowered further. "You haven't asked?" "About the third condition," Dominic noted as they finished the main course, his voice dropping to a more intimate register. "Of our agreement?" Vivian set down her chopsticks. "You said it depended on the outcome of the second getting to know you personally. And how would you say that's progressing?" There was vulnerability beneath the question, a hint of the orphan boy who had learned to expect disappointment. Vivian considered her response carefully. "I'm discovering that Dominic Blackwood is far more complex and compelling than any profile could capture. The man behind the empire is ... She sought the right words. Thoughtful, brilliant, surprisingly vulnerable. And is that man someone you could see yourself ... He paused, choosing his next words with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "Someone you could care about, beyond this assignment?" The directness of the question startled her, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Dominic was, after all, a man accustomed to efficiency, to pursuing objectives without unnecessary delay, especially now, with time potentially limited by his condition. I think you know the answer to that, she replied, holding his gaze. The question is whether caring would compromise my ability to tell your story honestly or enhance it. Hand moved across the table to cover hers. The best stories come from deep understanding, not detached observation. The warmth of his touch, the sincerity in his eyes. The intimate setting all conspired to weaken Vivian's professional resolve. She was attracted to him, yes, but more dangerously. She was beginning to care about him in ways that transcended physical attraction. "What is the third condition, Dominic?" she asked, turning her hand beneath his, so their palms met. His thumb traced gentle patterns across her skin. "That if these 2 weeks reveal what I believe is developing between us, you'll consider staying. In Tokyo, not permanently. I know your career is in New York, but perhaps, finding a way to explore what this could become." The request was both less and more than she had anticipated, not a demand for commitment, but an invitation to possibility. "And if I can't?" she questioned softly. "If professional ethics or practical realities make that impossible?" "Respect your decision." His expression remained open, vulnerable. "I've built my life making calculated risks, Vivian. You're worth the risk of disappointment." The raw honesty in his voice touched something deep within her. Before she could respond, the final course arrived, a delicate wagashi sweet accompanied by matcha tea. The bittersweet combination, a fitting metaphor for the complex situation they found themselves in as they sipped the vibrant green tea in contemplative silence. Vivian realized she stood at a crossroads. The safe path led back to professional detachment, to writing Dominic's story from an objective distance. The other path uncertain, potentially painful, and undeniably alluringly toward deeper connection with this remarkable man. "I can't make that decision tonight," she finally said. "These 2 weeks were your suggestions. Use them as intended. To learn if what we're feeling is real or merely the product of unusual circumstances." Relief and hope mingled in his smile. "Ain't. Reasonable approach. Though I should warn you, I've never been patient when pursuing something I truly want." The implications of that statement sent a shiver of anticipation through her, and these 2 weeks should prove interesting for both of us. After dinner, they walked through the neon-lit streets of Ginza, Tokyo's energy pulsing around them as they moved in their own bubble of growing intimacy. When Dominic's hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally, Vivian didn't pull away. Their return to the hotel was charged with unspoken tension. The elevator ride to their floor filled with awareness of what might happen if either crossed. The threshold that still separated professional interest from personal involvement. At her sweet door, Dominic paused. "Thank you for tonight, for listening. Me, not just my company or my condition." "Thank you for trusting me," she replied, keenly aware of his proximity. Of the subtle scent of his cologne mingled with the night air still clinging to his sweater, he leaned forward slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she chose. When she remained in place, his lips brushed her cheek in a gesture that somehow managed to be both restrained and deeply intimate. "Good night, Vivian," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that she felt as much as heard. "Good night," she echoed, her professional resolve wavering as she watched him enter his own suite through the adjoining door, which he pointedly left ajar in an invitation without pressure, a possibility without demand.